Welcome to Live with Miami's Community News, South Florida's #1 source for local stories. I'm Michael Miller, bringing people together and sharing the voices, events, and connections that shape our community.
Cheers, guys.
That'd be true.
I'm all in to be the Miami-Dade County mayor.
That event, tell everybody about it. What's next? What do we have to do?
Thank you for joining us. I'm Michael Miller. Special guest is Juan Carlos Porras. Thank you very much for joining us.
Michael, thank you so much for having me.
So you're state representative in District 119. For starters, tell us the approximate boundaries of 119.
Yeah, absolutely. So House District 119 is the most southwest portion of Miami-Dade County. So that encompasses areas of West Kendall, the Hammocks, Country Walk, and Richmond West. So it's one of the few districts in the state that has absolutely no cities in it whatsoever. But it does have some of the most homeowner associations in the whole state, which is
I think we're going to be talking about that.
I think so.
All right. So a couple things. How long have you been in office?
This is my third year in office as a member of the House, but I've been involved in politics, my whole adult life, I want to say.
So you look pretty young, all right? But people tell you that all the time.
Yes, so I'm actually the youngest member of the Florida House.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, well, I think I still am. There was somebody elected recently, but I am the first ever Gen Z member of the House. So that was a pretty cool accolade.
And you're the first member of your family to graduate from college. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I hope that's the beginning of lots of big openings for your family to do that. Homeowners associations have been the talk of the town probably for, 10 years, certainly the last 5 years, it's sort of picked up. We know the biggest one down here was this thing that was happening in the Hammocks out there, where a couple of the people wound up being charged criminally, and several $100,000 was misapplied or allegedly misapplied.
Millions. Yeah.
Millions. That's just gone. And that was a group that represented a lot of the smaller homeowners associations. And we know ever since the Surfside collapse, and unfortunately almost 100 people died there, the real conversations that was going on in most homeowners associations was how long can they delay maintenance? And so that was one of the alleged causes where people didn't want to pay the fee. They kept fighting. And I was on a homeowners association. I get it, all right? And so your neighbors say, no, we need to raise the rate, all right? And your neighbors go, no, you guys are misapplying it, you're overspending. So you have a position about homeowners associations. So let's talk about that.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's important first to distinguish between condo associations and homeowner associations. There's a very huge difference in the law. One is guided under Chapter 718 of Florida statute. Obviously, condominiums have shared walls, shared floors, shared roofs. It's a very different aspect. But what I've been proposing has been a complete abolition of homeowner associations as we know them. That is single and multifamily homes. Primarily, the Hammocks is the largest one in the state, the third largest in the country.
No kidding.
And for, just to clarify, there was about $7 million that was stolen from my community about 4 years ago, 3 years ago when I first got elected is when they were first arrested by our great state attorney, Catherine Fernandez-Rondon, who I was working with closely and continue to work closely on that case. I think it's a failed experiment, Michael. I mean, homeowner associations for decades were created as a factor, to maintain common elements, grass, maintenance, certain rules. But the fact of the matter is they have grown so powerful and they have grown to be so mismanaged that I think, we need to have the conversation of whether or not they're even necessary anymore.
So looking from a novice point, so how do you pay for the tennis courts that are there or the buildings that are owned by the association, if you will, and there's a gym inside there or a dance hall? How do you separate that?
Yeah, that is the number one question that gets asked of me. There are common elements in areas that don't have homeowner associations. I mean, and there are a slew of different options. I mean, there are community development districts. There are special taxing districts. Believe it or not, I live in part of Kendall that does not have a homeowner association, but the county and the municipalities still maintain all of our common elements, and we do pay a little bit more in property taxes. But that is, we do not pay these exorbitant HOA fees and have to deal with the bureaucracy that some of my neighbors do. And I think that that most people would want to do that. I mean, there's recent polls that have come out, I think, with the realtors I heard that about 70% of new homeowners prefer to not buy a house in a homeowner association. So this is not just me, one state house member saying that HOAs are out of control. This is, I think, residents from across the country. I recently posted it on social media, getting hundreds of thousands of likes and views. I've gotten thousands of emails to my inbox saying that they would support something similar. But we need to have that conversation, because not just CDDs. Obviously, private clubs are an option. Going back to your question, obviously Ocean Reef being the largest one in our state, that it does have some HOAs in it, but it operates as a voluntary club, which if you want the services, you pay for it voluntarily, but it doesn't mean that you have to pay for it every month if you want to live in that area.
So how would you forget anything that was new? But how do you go to a homeowners association? These are single family homes for the most part, all right, where the homeowners association might be mowing the front yard, as in some of the cases, and
Sure.
and all the things that they do. So how do you go through and slice and dice that so that there can be a viable, whatever it's going to be called afterwards?
Well, there needs to be a conversation with all the stakeholders, right? We need to have the conversation with the municipality. In most cases, it'll be Miami-Dade County or a city, depending on where the association is, and what would be the cost to essentially do the maintenance of these areas that need to be fulfilled. If it's just mowing the lawn, if it's cutting trees, that's something that we need to make sure that gets done as, like I said, like a special taxing district or something that the municipality is in control of. But I mean, there are different options, Michael. I don't think people realize that reality, what we pay for in our county and city taxes already encompass what a lot of these homeowner associations are built to do.
So, and I understand clearly now, the condominium homeowners associations, those are different.
They're completely different. Obviously, it'd be very difficult to get rid of condo associations, just because obviously somebody has to insure the building. So if your neighbor upstairs has a leak, there needs to be someone to address
And there's
that.
certainly a lot of challenges with that, especially recently with the changes in the 40-year inspection. Now, what I understand is 30 years, and now it's every 10-year inspection, which seems to be like right around the corner all the time.
Right. I mean, there's not to say that there isn't issues in condo associations. I think there are just as many or more. In my opinion, I think for when it comes to condos, there already exists a level of enforcement mechanism. The state does have certain jurisdiction through the Department of Business and Professional Regulation to go into some of these condo associations. But the fact of the matter is that they are not complying with state law. Year by year, the legislature and we've been working on bills for homeowner associations, for condo associations, providing more transparency, more accountability. And frankly, Michael, these board members have wiped, the legislation where the sun doesn't shine. So at what point do we continue to allow these criminals, essentially in some cases, to continue doing what they're doing and have our homeowners with no alternative or nowhere to look towards?
It seems to me in the hammocks case, no one wanted to believe it or look into it. Do I have that right?
Absolutely. I mean, we had I want to say about a decade. The Hammocks Association scandal did not happen overnight. It did not happen over a year. This was years and years of a organized crime effort by the board president and the members, making shell companies using family members, friends, what have you, to create fake companies and do maintenance services, all sorts of business opportunities that didn't exist, that it was put into their bank accounts and washed through certain other business entities. I swear I'm gonna write a Netflix documentary about it someday. But when I last spoke to the state attorney on it, and I think it was somewhere in the press recently, that there were receipts of some of these illegal business deals hidden in the floor tiles of the clubhouse of the Hammocks. So
Amazing.
It's incredible to me.
So there may be other ones that are like going on right now like that.
Absolutely. I mean, after we've uncovered what happened in the Hammocks, I've gotten calls and emails to my office from Pensacola to Key West. People are upset with their homeowner associations. People are either not getting their documents. By law, you are supposed to get any sort of financial documents. If you officially request it to your homeowner association, they have the obligation to give it to you. That is unfortunately not what's been going on. I even went to a further extent of putting a law into the books about a year ago, forcing homeowner associations to have a public website so that people can access their documents. And
they didn't like that, did they?
No, and I'll tell you, about under 40% of HOAs to this day have a website.
Because no one's enforcing it.
Because no one's enforcing it. Exactly.
Okay, so much for that. Let's move on to some other things. So what are some of the things that you as a state representative can do to improve the lives of the people in your district?
Absolutely. I mean, we just talked about one of the biggest issues, obviously the homeowner associations. My office, I kind of serve as a liaison between my constituents and some of the issues that they're having. I've worked with the Department of Business Professional Regulation, if not daily, weekly, on some of the complaints that we've seen from some condos, some HOAs. On top of that, any sort of constituent work that has to do with our state agencies, with Medicaid, with Department of Education, with our school voucher program. I think we have one of the best constituent services in the state. And we do help people not from our district. I get calls, like I said, from everywhere, and we try to be as helpful as possible.
Juan Carlos, across the country, there have been cutbacks in money, a lot of different areas. It sort of reminded me about after Hurricane Andrew, everybody had a lot of money for a couple of years, and all of a sudden you turn around 18 months later and people are broke. Mm-hmm. That seems to me what happened here. As far as a lot of money that was being spent from the feds with COVID, whatever it was, and we were used to getting money from the state, unemployment compensation, which was not even charged to anybody except for the taxpayers. The state didn't go after the people that they knew there was some funny business because it was too expensive, to go after them. But so what are some of the answers to people that have small businesses down here? Can the state do anything to assist them? Mm-hmm. And with all the cutbacks, especially for not-for-profits, we've seen that. In Dade County was two things. One, the county cut back, the feds cut back, mm-hmm. and then the state did cut back. I do want to thank everybody in the district for donating a lot of money to the Chabad of Pinecrest and Kendall to fight anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to remind everybody, last year, Rabbi Yossi Harlig is walking down 112th Street. Somebody rolls down the window and says, "Go back to the gas chambers." This is in suburbia, Miami-Dade County, 2025. So imagine what's really going on around the rest of the country.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of questions, but I think first off, what the state can do and has done for small businesses, actually, if you weren't aware, this past legislative session, as part of our tax package, we officially eliminated entirely what we call the business rent tax. That is essentially if you own a small business or have a lease to a building on your business, the state, we used to be one of the only states in the union that had this unnecessary tax, and every year we used to chip away at it. But we've officially, under Speaker Perez's leadership, this past year completely eliminated it. And obviously, when it comes to a lot of the tax holidays, we continue to do that for parents and homeowners and business owners. Obviously, the conversation for property taxes is still a very hot topic. I sit on the select committee on property taxes.
So let's talk about that. Well, how would the local governments, mm-hmm. all right, not the state, but the local governments, exist if they're using all that property tax now?
So I think it's a conversation that's still going on at the highest levels. Obviously the legislature cannot simply abolish property taxes, although the governor does think that we have that ability sometimes. I sit, like I said, on the select committee that the speaker organized in the House to craft proposals so that we can put it on the ballot now in 2026, because we will need some kind of constitutional amendment to be able to regulate or limit property taxes in some capacity. I will say, I've been an advocate on the committee to try to increase the homestead value exemption for seniors, especially. I think it's here in Miami-Dade County, seniors that have been living in their homes, 20, 30 years above a certain age gap, should either pay little to no taxes, in my opinion, when it comes to the state. And that's something that I'm going to continue to advocate for.
So as you may recall, Miami-Dade County lowered its tax rate in 2023 and 2022. When I asked the mayor, in hindsight, was that the right thing to do, considering that a month ago, the administration was claiming they had a $400 million deficit? Mm-hmm. I don't quite remember what the answer was, but it was like no, it was okay. That was a sense. But when we looked at the changes that occurred here in Miami-Dade County with the recent election of the brand new departments, for the clerk of the court's been around for a while, but the tax collector, the property appraiser, the supervisor of elections, and the police is now completely different departments. It's certainly in the short run has caused humongous amount of grief, only for the people that were in power, right? But it seemed to be more of a financial issue. When do you think that's going to get sorted out, or do you think it's already like leveling out?
I think it's starting, things are starting to simmer. I like to believe, obviously, the county is going to say, woe is me, we have all of this deficit, and blame everyone but themselves. But the reality of the matter is that it's their own mismanagement. Unfortunately, governments, if they are not regulated on how much they can spend, they are going to spend freely and willingly. That is the reality of the county. Right. That's the reality of our cities. The state is actually one of the few entities that has to pass a balanced budget. But, like every Floridian, like every American tightening their belts at home with their budgets, I think it's time the county does the same. I
got to tell you, she's my mayor. All right. I voted for her, and the first 4 years were wonderful. Then something happened, right? and I did ask her, it's a $12 billion budget plus. You guys couldn't figure out that this was a possibility that could happen?
Right.
And that's when all the finger pointing is all over the place. And it was like pretty sad. Unfortunately, the headlines are written. You can't undo those headlines. I've already seen them out there. So something happened that they weren't open with the public, but it seems as though now everything is copacetic and they found the money. We deal a lot with the charities that are here in Miami, where I see that they're hurting, and it was pretty clear that they're going to get some of the money, if not most of it, but don't count it for next year. Some of the charities were under the impression that it was a forever grant,
right?
But it's not, right? Explain to people, if they wanted to go to the state to try to get money, how do you explain that to them in better days, all right? That you say, we might be able to get it to you this year, but it has nothing to do with tomorrow's.
Well, first of all, good luck if you want to get money through the state. We have a very arduous process. We call it the appropriations committee. So every year, obviously, myself and all my colleagues as members, we have the ability to put in appropriation requests to the state, whether for a charity organization or for a county or a city project. And it goes through a variety of committees that ask questions. That we have to debate on the merits of these appropriations.
It's not like getting money from your spouse.
No, definitely not. And for the most part, these projects are one-offs. So this is not something that you can come back the next year. And even if you do get it, even if it passes the House and it passes the Senate and the governor, if you've been a good soldier, it doesn't get vetoed. Unfortunately got a couple vetoed this year. But if that all happens, there is no assurity that you're going to get that funding from the state again next year.
So how many reviews are there when somebody applies? 3 or 4, it sounds like.
Right, yeah.
And so do your constituents call you up and say, okay, pass number 1, but don't worry, there's 3 more, right? Pass number 2. Oops, didn't work on number 3.
Yeah, I mean, the appropriations process, we try to make it as transparent as possible. And as a state, we publicize the final budgets 48 hours before we officially vote on it. So everyone has a chance to see what's being funded, what's not being funded. But my constituents, at least for the most part, are very interested in, like, we just talked about the HOA legislation. And I love bringing that up. But we've provided a lot of resources, not just to the county. We actually worked on a project this past session for the sheriff with this same issue. The part of the lack of enforcement is the lack of training and personnel for our law enforcement and our state attorney that are so inundated with all these cases, obviously. But the HOA is such a niche, the HOA condo crimes, as we call them, are such a niche white collar issue that they really don't have the personnel. So I put in, a good appropriation project that was passed by the House and the Senate this year, but unfortunately got vetoed by the governor. So politics does play a part in it, unfortunately.
Okay, let's talk about mental health care and care for people on the spectrum, including autism. So what happened this year, and what's going to happen? When's your next session? Starts in
January,
right around the corner. For most of us, it's around the corner. What can you do to help people that are on the autism spectrum?
Yeah, so there has been a lot of changes in the past year. I want to say we're obviously working alongside Speaker Perez, which is an issue that's very close to his heart. He has family, obviously, that are on the spectrum. We were dealing with this insane wait list that was given, that the state and APD, people that were on the spectrum that were had autism or Down syndrome or a disability, were waiting for the state to get this funding or to get these services. But we had seen that some of them were on a wait list for months and years. So there were changes this past year on some cases for the Medicaid waiver, and kind of switching to a hybrid of the APD, the state agencies are getting involved, but also transferring some of those people on the wait list to managed care programs. Obviously, it's not something that works for every family, but it does work for some. So we're trying to make sure we have the opportunity to give those options. And obviously, getting the feedback this year that we get from those changes, I think we're going to see some more in this following session.
So I understand maybe it's throughout the state, or maybe it's only Miami-Dade County, where the law enforcement has been notified about certain homes that they have autistic kids in the house.
The autism spectrum bill, yes.
Yeah, and I think there's also a label that can go on there, so when the police go over there, they don't think it's somebody that is going to attack them, rather than somebody that has some emotional issues.
Yeah.
If that can be expanded, that would be wonderful. We had a lot of conversations from April, which is Autism Awareness Month. We've had a lot of guests who made us be a lot more aware of what's going on. And when I was with when Carlos Porras heads up Jackson Memorial Hospital, he's one of our speakers recently, and so I asked him, as more diagnosis than Michael, when we were kids, we used to call them slow, and as soon as he said that, then I remembered. We didn't put a name on it.
Right.
All right. So this is this wide range of people that are on the spectrum, and I would guess that Albert Einstein would say we're all on the spectrum, and he was heading it up. All right.
Yeah.
As far as being brilliant.
But it's important that people realize that, right? That that somebody is on the spectrum, and you mentioned that legislation that got passed, which is so important, because when you have some of these individuals that tend to sometimes be violent, sometimes have an outburst, and you have an issue with law enforcement, you need to make sure that they're aware that this person has some kind of disability and is not someone that's going to is trying to aggravate them. So I think that legislation was super important. It was an honor for me to vote in support of that.
That's wonderful. So you were elected 3 years ago, right? Then you were reelected a year ago.
That's right.
So it looks like this is 2025. So you have another year. In a little bit.
So I have this next year, and then I have to get reelected, obviously, in November of next year. And then I think in the legislature we have a maximum of 8 years. This is my third, so after next year I'll be able to do 4 more, God willing, if my constituents think I'm doing a good enough job.
Okay. So I know there's probably been some people that have helped you along your way. We have a camera. Can we put the camera on them right in there? Why don't you talk to them?
I just want to say thank you to obviously all my constituents back home, my residents. A big thank you obviously to my family. I couldn't do this without them. My father, my mother, who spent hours and days on the campaign trail with me, as well as my team, my district aide, Carmen, who helps our constituents in our district office. My beautiful girlfriend Camila, who's been fantastic, and for mentors wise, I've had so many over the years. Secretary Rubio, who was at that point was Senator Rubio when I was in college, was such a big mentor for me and getting me through the college Republicans and getting me involved in the Miami-Dade GOP. As well as some other members of the party at that time. So it's been an honor for me to be, the first Gen Z member of the House, the youngest member of the House, and hopefully there's a lot left to give. So it's a real honor for me to continue in this role.
Wonderful. Representative, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
And folks, I want to share with you, and we're going to look right in this camera over here. I wanted to first thank the representative. Second, I wanted to share with you something that Disney has. It's called the Disney rule, which is when you hug somebody, don't stop until they do. Have a great day, and thanks for joining us. Bye now.